Thank you very much. And yeah, as a warm-up, I would like to give you some insights how this kind of sector performs. And as you know, we as IPD collect data from the different institutional investors and then have performance data. And so here you see the commercial real estate sectors where we have direct primary data from the different markets. And you see the total return over the years, over the last 15 years, and look at the red line. The red line is the performance of industrial. And industrial, of course, includes as a big, big part logistics. And if you look at the dots right at the end here, that's the performance, average performance over the last 15 years. And the sector that performs the best is what you're going to discuss today, industrial. And you will see, okay, it performs really good, but not in every year. You see that also logistics has the line with the highest volatility. But important, this is the primary data from the different institutional investors, insurance companies, funds, listed companies that supply the data. That's the average for whole of Europe. And here's sort of the view of outperformance. Which sector outperforms the, let's say, average for Europe? And again, red, industrial. And you see in some years you can have really, really fantastic outperformance with industrial, but not in every year. And I think that's the task for the managers. Do they get the timing right? Are they able to buy in the years when it's cheap and to sell then when it's more expensive? And let's have a look at the components of the total return. The total return has two main components. On the one hand, income return, and on the other hand, capital growth. And here you see the income return. And the sector that promises the best income return and can deliver the highest income return are industrial. And you see it's quite a margin relative to the other main sectors. So income return is important. If you want to have high income return, you definitely have to look at industrial logistics. And I think maybe it's also one point of the discussion for later, especially in, let's say, German special funds, the distribution yields are important. Distribution yields are the sort of component the end investors, the pension funds want. And with industrial, with logistics, of course, with a high income return, you can also deliver a high distribution yield. I mean, the other part of a total return is capital growth. Let's have a look at the capital growth. And here you see that the red line, the performance of industrial, is below the others. So with industrial, with logistics, you are able to have a high income return, but you buy it with a capital growth that is in most years below zero. So in most years, you have a negative capital growth with logistics. And here, comparing real estate sectors, in a kind of diagram with volatility as an approximation of risk. We don't want to discuss this kind of shortcomings of standard deviation as an approximation of risk. But here you see that, on the one hand, industrial is the one sector with the highest return, but also the sector with the highest risk. So that's, again, the topic for the discussion. The managers have to get the timing right. The manager have to get the timing right, and then I sort of move already to my second last slide. The manager also have to get the kind of selection of the market rights. Here, for the year 2012, for the year with the latest data, you see the difference in the performance for industrial. And in Europe, you can have a performance in industrial of +6, going to Switzerland, to Poland, or of -6, if you go to Spain. So here it's important that you pick the right markets, of course. And you see when you have the discussion that Germany actually performs quite well in the year 2012 with industrial. So summing up as a basis for the discussion. So with industrial, with logistic, you have a outperformance sector in the long run, when long run is 15 years. You have a high income return, a really quite strong outperformance there of industrial sector, but hardly any capital growth, or in most years, a negative capital growth. You have the highest volatility of all sectors for the industrial sector, And there's a quite big difference between the countries. And if you look within a country, quite a big difference between one country. So I do hope that gives you enough material for good discussions from the panels, but then also, of course, from the audience. Rich, thanks. Thanks a lot.